Welcome to the Radiant Mission Podcast. We are on a mission to encourage and inspire other believers as they navigate through this life and with their relationship with Christ. We are a faith-based podcast, so we approach all issues from that biblical lens. And if you've been listening along, we hope that you've enjoyed the journey so far. We'd also like to remind you that we include very detailed show notes. They include links and basically a Cliff Notes version of our episodes, and they are on our blog. So be sure to subscribe to our blog for notifications of new episodes and those quick links to audio and the video version of our podcast as well. You can find that at theradiantmission.com/blog, or just go to the website and you'll see it. Now, we have been talking about birth, fertility, and today we have a very special guest with a miraculous story. Her name is Nichols, and she is actually a longtime friend. Rachel and I met Evan at Park Ridge Baptist Church down in the Parkland, Coral Springs, Florida area as kids. I don't even know how old we are. I think I was in like maybe sixth grade. So you guys
I think I was sixth grade. You were like,
Evan. That makes sense. That makes sense. You were probably sixth grade. So Evan, I think you're in between us. So you were probably seventh. Yeah. And I was probably eighth grade.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been 20 years.
I used to come to guys' house after, because your house was right by my middle school. So I used to come and have sleepovers at your house. Like, we're deep in the friendship. Like,
yes. Yeah. Yeah. We're so excited to have you here, Evan. It's crazy. I was thinking about today, this conversation we're going to have with you and how you and I used to dress like Avril Lavigne.
Oh my gosh, I show those photos to people now and they're like, I'm like, you don't even know what was happening.
We were like those scene kids before that was even a term.
Up to the elbows.
Yes.
Belts over belts, shirts over shirts. Yeah, we were messes.
The tie with no
oh my gosh
shirt just for
the tie with a t-shirt.
The tie with a tank top, tie with a t-shirt.
Mortified.
There was some real style going on back then.
It really was a time. It was a time.
Well, thank you so much, Evan, for your willingness to share your story with us. It is amazing. And I don't even know all the little details yet. I know Rachel has kind of more of an inside scoop on all of the details, and I've heard some of it. And so I can't wait. I'm just excited for you to share this today. So we really would just love it if you could start by sharing a little bit about yourself and your backstory and this journey, but also perhaps what made you want to share this story, because I know it's a true testimony.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100% true. I have proof of it, but real proof. But my name's Nichols. I'm 34. I've been married for 11 years. I've been with my husband for about 14. We've lived in a few different places in the country and had our fun, and we were ready, in our late 20s to start a family. And that's kind of where the story starts. And I'll kind of start there. But really what made me want to share this testimony was to bring hope. And as soon as we got to the end of this road, I knew that I wanted to share this story with people who needed this. This is a story that brings hope to barren wombs. This is a story that brings faith to people who are faithless. This is a story to remind people that our God still can do miracles, and he does them every single day. And I used to hear that a lot when I was going through my struggle, and I'm like, I know he does, but it's so true. And when you hear a story like mine, it just revamps the hope and faith and the reminder that we serve a really miraculous, amazing, so amazing.
Yeah, God. That's amazing. I got the chills when you were saying that, by the way.
So did I.
So it starts, my husband Brent and I met a long time ago, about 14 years ago, and we got married a few years later. We got married quickly, knowing that he was going to join the military. It was a decision he made in the time that we were dating. So it was like, oh, I want to join the military. Okay, well, let's get married. Okay, because we were going to do it anyway. We just sped up the process a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
And we decided really quickly that we were going to wait to have children. We really wanted to enjoy our young 20s. He had just finished all his training and everything. We were getting ready to move to Tennessee. And we were kind of like, let's just wait, see where this life takes us, and then go from there. But we also really just wanted to enjoy our young 20s. We were not in any rush to have kids. So we moved to Tennessee in like 2012. And then 2014, he was getting ready to go to Afghanistan. In January, he was going to be gone for 9 months. I kind of, sat him down before he left, and I said, look, it's time. I think when you come back from Afghanistan, I think we should try for a family. And he was excited and I was excited. So he went away and he came back, and we tried to start our family. I did notice some changes in my body at that time, but I wasn't really super concerned about it. I just knew that we wanted to have a baby. So I was just going to kind of let it happen, so we tried for a few months and nothing happened. And then we tried for a few more months and nothing happened. And, he and I sat down and had a conversation, and he said, look, what's going on? Like, should we go to a doctor? And I said, I did the thing that I know a lot of people do. And now that I know better, I would have done things differently. But I said, let's wait a year. Let's try for a year. Cause I know sometimes it just doesn't happen for people right away. And then I'll go to the doctor. You'll go to the doctor. We'll all get checked. So we tried for a year and still nothing happened. So I did the thing that I hate doing the most. And I went to the doctor. And the doctor, suggested some things. And then he said, well, we know that you have PCOS. And I was like, we don't know that. You know that. So I was officially diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome at that point, and it was kind of messing with my menstrual cycles. So that was the main reason I wasn't ovulating. That's why I couldn't get pregnant. And my doctor made it very clear to me that I would not get pregnant outside of medical intervention. So this was before, I grew up Christian. Obviously, we grew up in the same church, but I was pretty far from God at this point. I still believed in God and I trusted God. And I would pray to him and keep my husband safe in Afghanistan and, cover, protect my house, please, while I'm away, and, things like that. But I treated God differently, and I had a different relationship with him than I do now. So the doctor immediately said, look, we're going to start with the easy stuff, and then I'll move you into something a little bit harder, and then eventually we'll have to go to IVF. That will be your end all be all. He never said you could spontaneously get pregnant. He never said this happens for people. He never said any of that. And he was a good doctor, but it was just kind of like, you need medical intervention if you want to have a baby. So he put me on, and I'm going to say the name of the medication because I'm sure people out there know what it is. Put me on Clomid. And that medication needs heavy monitoring because literally your ovaries can expand and explode inside of you. So,
whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it can cause your ovaries to enlarge and then burst, basically.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was at the doctor like every week, either having blood drawn, having an internal ultrasound. It was a constant monitoring. And I think every week that I went to the doctor, it was just a constant letdown, because it was like, well, not pregnant, but we'll up your dosage. Well, not pregnant, but your blood work looks okay. Well, and it was very nonchalant for them, but for me, it was a little devastating, and it tore part of me every time. And then
sounds very traumatizing.
It was. Yeah. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that really sucks. And now I know why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, because I always describe it as like when I was on this medication, it felt like I could literally feel it. Just felt like from here to here and over top of me, it felt like a dark cloud over me.
Wow.
And that's how I could literally feel it. And my husband knew something was up with me. My mom knew something was up with me, and I could feel it, but I couldn't explain it. And I just thought it was the hormones and all this stuff going on. And I really wasn't telling a lot of people what was going on. So people were still asking, look, you and Brent have been together for a while. When are you guys going to have a baby? And those questions didn't really devastate me, but they didn't help.
Yeah, they're painful.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're like, if you only knew
if you only knew what I'm going through right now, what my body is going through.
Yeah. And it was hard on my body. I was having terrible menstrual cycles. You know, it was hard on my emotions. And then one night, Brent and I were going to go to a friend's house. We had to stop at the store and pick something up. And he said, "Hey, you went to the doctor's today, right?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "How did it go?" And I just bursted into tears. And I wasn't even really telling him what was going on. And I was like, "I'm just, and he was like, "Whoa, okay." Luckily, I have a really understanding husband, and he sat down with me. He's like, "Look, whatever happens, we're going to get through this. We've gotten through everything we've done. You're going to be okay." You know, he was really, really supportive through everything. And so I did a couple rounds of Clomid, and at the beginning of 2016, we got a phone call that my father-in-law passed away very tragically in an accident, very suddenly, very tragically. He was hit by a train. It was terrible. He was young, you know, he was like in his 50s. So of course we rushed to Ohio to be with my husband's family and to help them take care of things. And I had been asked,
I'm so sorry.
It was really bad, but you know what? We always said if one person came to know the Lord through my father-in-law's passing, it would be worth it. And all three of my husband's three younger half siblings all came to know God through it. So we're, you know, of course it's devastating, but it brought light into a dark situation. And him passing was a segue for us too. So we were dealing with a lot of really bad things there, just family, you know, people go through things when they're mourning, and people say things and do things that they wouldn't typically do. So we were dealing with a lot of that stuff too, and being like kind of outside of the grandparents and, you know, the aunt, we were kind of the only adults. We were trying to really help facilitate things as best we could. And my husband was so adamant about, he's very like business driven, like let's get the tasks done. And he didn't want to leave things. So he was so driven in doing things that we didn't stop to think about any of it. And one night we were dealing with a particular situation, and I said, "Look, let's just pray." And I was not really always that kind of person. I would say to myself, "I'll just pray about it." But I said, "Let's just pray." So we prayed about it, and he went and had a meeting with a few people. And he came back, he said, "Evan, I literally watched God move in that meeting like I've never experienced in my life before." And he looked at me and he said, "When we get back to Tennessee, we are going to church." And I was like, "You got it, dude." So, and I had been wanting that, but I also knew I couldn't force him into it. And not that he was against it, but he wasn't pushing for it either. So I was kind of waiting for the right opportunity for him to say, "We need to get our family back into church." So we started going back to church, and it started helping us grow a little bit and be just different than how we were, and really starting to understand God on a different level than how we ever were before. And meanwhile, while we were getting into church up there, my family was transitioning into a very different kind of church down here as well, where, you know, we believe in a God who does miracles, and we believe in, you know, prophecy, and we believe that the Bible talks about all these things. And my parents started going to a miraculous church that moves in a lot of those ways. And so my parents were getting into these things, and, you know, I was kind of like, "I don't know about all this, you guys." So, because I didn't know, you know, and now that I read the word more, and I understand how God moves more now, you know, I know that I was just putting God in a box. So I came down here for my sister-in-law's bridal shower in the end of 2016. And I went to church with my family that Sunday, and I just didn't know what to expect, because I knew God moved in a really, really amazing way, but I didn't understand it. So the pastor got up there. He knew nothing about me, and it was a smaller church at the time. We've grown quite a bit since then. And he said, "I want everybody to put their hands on their stomach." And everybody was like, and he goes, "Say, I'm pregnant." And he goes, "Pregnant with emotion, pregnant with, you know," and he just started saying all these things. And I'm sitting there like, okay, you know, because I'm dealing with all this infertility stuff, and I'm going through all these crazy things. So what do I know? So eventually he comes to me, and he said, you know, basically the Lord gave me a word, and it said, it was the parable of the persistent friend in Luke. And it talks about you're laying in bed with your children and your friend comes to the door, knocks on the door, knocks on the door, knocks on the door. And then you're like, go away, I'm in bed with my children. And they just keep knocking on all your neighbors' doors and basically until you let them in. And what the heck does that mean? I don't know. So I went to the pastor, and I spoke with him afterwards, and he said, well, do you have children? And I said, no, that's been my husband and I struggle. And he said, well, that verse said that you're laying in bed with your children, so you will have kids. And right then and there, that dropped hope into my heart that I had literally never, ever had before. And it's so crazy because before that, I would ask God, I'm like, Lord, I don't care if just a random person in the grocery store walks up to me and tells me that I'll have a baby. I don't care if you're going to tell me that I'm going to have a baby in 20 years, as long as I know that I'm going to have a baby. And that's all I was looking for hope in the world. And I was looking for hope. Anybody, just give me hope. And God put that in my heart right then and there. And it was just, and it came, it was just something that I really, really needed. And it changed my whole life in one afternoon. So I went home to Tennessee, and I was just ready to understand things on a different level and to understand what is this. I started praying more and I started reading my Bible more. And, a lot of people would ask me, well, why don't you guys just adopt? And my husband and I prayed about that. We sat down and we kind of were like, I said, look, let's talk about this. This was after all this happened, because we're going to have a baby, right? We know we're going to have kids, but what way are we going to have kids? So I said, let's talk about this and say, let's pray about it for 1 month. Each of us will pray. Lord, if we're meant to have a child of our own, keep that in our hearts. If we're meant to adopt, change our hearts about adoption. If we're not meant to have kids at all, which we knew we were, just take kids off the table for us completely. Like just tell us we're not meant to have them. So we prayed about it for a whole month, and then we had a dinner date, and I said, okay, so we've been praying for a month. How do you feel? He said, I really still feel like we need to have our own kids. And I was like, me too. So we prayed, we both knew that this is what we were supposed to do. We just couldn't get to it. So after all that, I stopped taking fertility medication. I took a break and I decided I'm not going to do it again, because I knew that I needed to rely on God. And actually, after that word from the Lord, I never went, this is going to sound bad to some people, but I never went back to the OB again, because I trusted that God would make this happen for me. And I didn't need medical intervention. And I knew that God would take care of me. And I knew that if he says it, right, his word is yes and amen. So if God tells me I'm going to have my children, I'm going to have my children. So I I clutched that word into my heart. Like I want to keep thinking about it, because I had to. What other hope did I have?
Yeah.
Right. The doctors weren't doing it. Clomid wasn't doing it. And I knew I didn't want to put my body through IVF, because the women who do that are seriously, they're so strong, because that's really tough. But I knew I didn't want to do that. So this was all I had. I had to rely on God to do this. So eventually God placed it in our hearts to move down to Florida. And we moved down here and began serving God completely in a way that we never were before. We always would try to get involved in church wherever we were at. But this time it was really different. God, I eventually was placed in as head of our children's ministry in our church, and which I'm still doing. And I'm also on the worship team, one of the worship leaders. And God really gave me he trusted a lot in my hands, and I knew I needed to serve him wholly and fully, and not because I wanted this. I didn't do it because I wanted this miracle to happen. I'm going to do this for you, God, but you got to do this for me. It's more like, I love you, Lord. And I know that no matter what, I love you. And I just want to serve you in your church, and I want to serve your people. So I was really adamant about making sure that I loved God, and I love God, not because he was going to do something for me, but because he loves me. And I don't deserve that. I don't deserve the love that he gives me. And and how much he loves us and all the things that he does for us, So I was really, really adamant about serving and loving on God, and really, really just focusing on my relationship with him. So God really, really worked in a lot of ways for us over the years. And I'm just trying to think, I prayed to God a lot through this and asked him, Lord, I know you're going to bless me with a child. I know you're going to bless me with a child. Can I just see her? Can I just see him or her, who, whatever it is? Can you just show? And I was praying that for a long time. And then one night, and Rachel, you come into the story at this point. And I said, and I was just, God took me to a new place when I was praying, and I had a vision, and I was sitting on the floor of a kitchen, and it actually looked like one of my old friends' kitchens in Tennessee. And I was sitting on the floor of a kitchen, and there was like a table, and there was French doors to my right. And I'm looking around this kitchen, and I see a little, probably like 1 or 2 year old girl walk past me, blonde curls, and she's wearing this beautiful, like cobalt blue, like ball gown dress. And she walks over to the window, and she puts her hand on the window. I'm getting choked up. And then that was it. And I literally, after I was sitting, I was like, was that my daughter? And it was like, just total peace ran over me. And it was like, God just showed me my child. Like, that's amazing. So I got to see my kid before I ever even held her in my arms or in my body or anything. So, and then a few days later, Rachel, maybe like a week or so later, Rachel reached out to me, and she's like, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I had a dream about you last night and you had a gender reveal party, and I really don't even 100% remember it. Maybe you want to say Rachel, but
yeah, I didn't really realize until you're telling me, because we've talked about this before, but I didn't realize that this was so soon after that vision that you had.
Mm-hmm.
But, since we've known each other since we were young, we've kept in touch, but we've lived, across
All
the country
over.
from each other. Yeah. So it's like, every few years or so we catch up. And I had this, and I will say, outside of pregnancy, I don't dream very often, and I do not dream vividly. And I had this very vivid dream one night about you. And I was at your gender reveal party.
Yeah.
And it was you and your husband. And I remember all the details too, even now. And everybody was wearing white, and you were doing one of those confetti things. Yeah. And it was blue though. Mm-hmm. And I woke up after having that dream. I'm like, wow, it's really weird. I had that dream about Evan, because it was really out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it for like a day, maybe 2 days, because I was thinking about reaching out to you, but I'm like, this is kind of creepy. Like, we hadn't talked in like a while, and it just felt so random, but it just kept like gnawing at me. Yeah. And so I reached out to you, and I said, this is going to sound creepy, but I had this dream, and I told you what it was. And I had no idea what you were going through. I had no idea that you were having these fertility struggles, and you told me that. And that's so wild that it really felt like God used me in that way, even though I was someone from your past.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've never really had that happen with anyone. Yeah. So
it's just such a confirmation of God's word and the things that he was already showing me and telling me. And I think it's just all orchestrated by God that we even kept in somewhat contact over the years for you to even, it is awkward to be like, hey, I had a dream about you, it is weird, but it's just God orchestrating all of that so that, there is a door that stays a little open so that we can say these things to each other. And, because there are people that I've totally, not talked to anymore, but, with you, when you reached out to me, I wasn't like, wow, this girl is a creep. I was like, wow, God is so cool, and it just was so, it was so cool. And, infertility is so crippling. it's so crippling for people, and
I wanted to ask you something about that. While you were going through this stuff and like just holding on to this hope and this promise of God, I know from my own experience and hearing from other women, especially being a woman of faith, that we approach things differently than women struggling with infertility who don't have the same beliefs. So how was that feeling for you at that time? Especially like before you had this vision and you were praying, like, did you feel like you were like wrestling with the Lord and trusting him? Or were you really like just set in that hope?
before I got this word from the Lord, before I had this hope from God, right? It was, and I was going to say this, like, infertility is different for everyone, but for me, it was just like, you're never going to have kids. What if you never have kids? So if I wasn't busy, this wheel was squeaking in my head constantly, and it was causing anxiety, and and I've never struggled with anxiety, but it was causing anxiety. It was causing, I held it here in my chest, and I could always feel this weight on my chest. And I'm not kidding with you. As soon as that word was spoken to me, the wheel was gone. The weight on my chest was gone. And it was like, as soon as I got that word, I never struggled again. Like with, of course, then, it was like, okay, God, you said I'm going to do this, but like your timing, what's the timing, and
Right.
Of course, God doesn't reveal his timing to us ever. And his timing is always perfect.
Right.
But for me, after I think there was so much learning about who God was and who I was in God. And in that time between when I received this word and then, moving forward, God had to really grow me, because I wasn't that person that was like, I can't go to your baby shower because, it's going to hurt me. I really tried to always support my friends, because I didn't want anybody to feel the way that I was feeling. And I didn't want anybody to feel bad for me either. I really just wanted everybody to be normal with me. Don't treat me special. Don't be like, I'm sorry you had to be at the shower. I wanted to be happy for my friends. Of course, the initial shock of finding out that certain like friends were pregnant was like a little rough on me, but I was never like mad at people or held like a resentment or an anger. I think I was just like, what's wrong with my body? Like, why does this have to happen to me? Why, I'm the one that wants kids. Like, why can't I have kids? I internalized it more than I pushed it out on people. And I always tried to make sure that I was happy for people. I was always trying to involve myself just to make sure that my heart was right. Like, and this was all before, and I would be like, I'm 100% I'll do your gender reveal. And I was happy to do it because it was my way of showing like, listen, I'm so happy for you. And I'm really happy for you. And I'm going to love your babies. Like would love my own babies. So, but God, he totally healed me of all that.
That's awesome. And I wanted to throw in there, speaking of loving other people's babies, that's something that you've done.
Yeah.
For a large part of your life is love other people's babies, right?
Yeah. I was before, for the last probably 4 or 5 years, I was a nanny, and I was a nanny with, I say 2.5, because I was with the second family for a very short time before they moved. But the first family, I was with them for a few years, and I raised both of their daughters from newborn until they moved away. One was about to be 2, and the other one was about 8 months when they moved. So, or maybe she was about to be 3, something like that. And then the second family I was with them for a short time, and they ended up moving. It was just too far of a commute for me, but I really loved their family, and they had a sweet little boy. And then the third family I was with for about like 8 or 9 months, maybe 10 months. And that was the surprise family. Everything was a surprise for them too, along the way. But God really filled my arms and my heart with these kids in the time that I had to wait. And I think that was a lot of healing for me too, because I was able to love these kids and care for these kids. And I never was like, oh God, I have to take care of these kids. And, there were times when I would rock them to sleep, and I'd be like, Lord, I love this job so much, and I'm so grateful that you gave it to me. But just let me know when it's time for it to be my baby, to be rocking, to sleep. And I would say, I trust you and I believe you and I know you're going to do it. And I always kept that in my heart. I never lost faith in him, because he's taken me this far. I can't back down now, and it was almost like, I'm too far deep right now. I have nowhere else to go. So, and it wasn't like I felt trapped in it, but I just knew that this was the only way that this was going to happen for me, was through God and his miracles that he performs. And God just really, he healed my heart. He took this broken thing, and on the outside, I didn't look broken, but on the inside I was, and he just totally put it back together. And I believe that's one of the reasons why, I was in this waiting period for so long. First, because God's timing is perfect. And second, because God had to heal me, and he had to make sure that I was in the right place to become a mother and to raise my daughter up, or my son up, or my kids up to be strong men, women of God. And how can I do that if I'm still dealing with this trauma and this pain, this hurt, this, resentment or whatever? God totally healed my heart, and he was just making everything better. And he was, growing me in ways I'd never experienced before. And it was all just from spending a little time with him every day, something I'd never really done before. And it's just so amazing how, when you see how much things can change just by spending a little bit of time with God every day, reading your word and worshiping and praying, and, and really just seeking him for everything. Like, a lot changes, a lot. And I'm so grateful to him for really making me a different person. He really did. And
That's awesome.
He totally,
he was preparing you.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so grateful that, I never would have thought that I would have been a nanny. Like, I was in retail for so long, stuck in that squeaky wheel, I just didn't know what else to do. And then when I moved down back to Florida, I moved here before my husband did, because he was still in the Army, but we didn't have anywhere to live. It was kind of like, so we lived separate for about a year. I lived down here and he was up in Tennessee while he was getting out. And I moved down here to start a life for us. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And and that was just another God thing, was the nanny thing. I was like, maybe I could be a nanny. And it just kind of started to resonate in my heart. Like, maybe I could do that. And then my family knew a family that needed a nanny. They just had a baby, and their nanny that they'd hired was like, I don't think I could do this. She didn't even work one day yet. And then I interviewed with them, and they were like, well, we'll take a chance on you. They didn't say it like that, but it was really taking a chance, because I'd done childcare before, but not to this capacity every day, all day. There were 2 doctors, so they were gone a lot. Wow. And they still will tell you to this day, because I still see the girls a lot. I see the girl, not a lot, but I try to see them as often as I probably see them once a year. They'll tell you that it was like the best choice they've ever made. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything.
I know how much you love them, though, because I remember you talking about it, social media stuff during this time. And it was very clear, like, you could see that you were a part of their family. And that's what happens when you're a nanny. You may or may not know, I nannied for a family for 9 years.
I think I remember that. Yes.
I don't know if it feels like it couldn't have been that long, but it had to be. And I was like a part of their family, and they were like a part of my family, and just watching those kids grow up, and now they're grown. And that's the weirdest thing.
It's so wild that you rocked in your arms be adult. It's crazy. And of course my girls aren't adults yet, but they're growing. They're
growing. Just wait until you're going to their wedding, and then you're really going to be like, what?
I can't handle it yet.
Can I just say something real quick? As you were talking about this time as you were a nanny, and you were in this waiting period, and the Lord is working on your heart. What came to my mind just like very vividly right now is the scripture from Psalm 37. And I just quickly looked it up. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your judgment as the noonday. And that vision just came to me of bringing forth your righteousness as the light and your judgment as noonday, as he was working on your heart of bringing that out of you. And that to me is just it's so beautiful and encouraging that you were having this growth in that waiting.
Yeah.
And that's something Rebecca and I have been discussing a bit as we've talked about these struggles with infertility and how to walk this path as women trusting in the Lord. And it is so difficult and it's so heartbreaking, and the waiting is so hard, and the longing, it's like having love in your heart for someone you haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
And I just speaking for myself and my own experiences, that can often become just like a thorn in the side of our faith, of struggling with our faith with the Lord, of like, why me? Why am I going through this? Why so long? Like, why are you doing this? Why can't this just happen? Just a lot of whys.
Yeah.
And so I'm just personally very encouraged to hear how you love these children that weren't your own, and you helped raise them, and you just patiently waited on the Lord for your time.
Yeah.
And he was faithful to give you the desires his desires in your heart.
He placed in my heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a few things, actually. I remember when I first started going back to church, and I was talking to my dad on the phone. I was like, he said, well, you're going to have to do the will of, you're going to have to do the will of God. You're going to have to do what God wants you to do. And I was like, well, what if I don't want to do what God wants me to do? And he was like, but if you're following God properly, you're going to want to do what God wants you to do. And it's so true, because once you start seeing God's plan unfold, you're like, oh, wait, I want that. I don't want that. I don't want that anymore. I want that first. And somebody once told me, it was our pastor once told me, you have to be patient in faith. And I didn't understand what that meant in that time, but I've learned over time that I had to have faith, but I had to have patience and wait on the Lord. And that was really hard to learn, because, we live in a society, like, let's do this now, do this now. But had I gotten my miracle, 2 years ago, we weren't in the right position to have it. And God has done so many transitions over the years, just these last few years, to bring us to where we are now. And my husband and I talk all the time about how, wow, if we would have had this, what we have now 2 years ago, we would have screwed it up so bad. So we had growing to do, both of us. And I think really, and I really believe, and I know that God wanted me to find contentment in him first, before I had anything that he could give me. I had to learn how to worship him. I had to learn how to seek him. I had to learn how to do all this stuff and really grow in him, and grow in my patience, and grow in my faith, and be faithful to the things that he's placed in my hands, to be able to learn how to be content in just him. And I got to the point at the end where I was like, Lord, I trust you. And whether you do this or you don't do this, I know you're going to, but even if you didn't, I am so content just in what you've given me and what you've done. And I really had to get to that point. And I feel like when I say this stuff, I don't even know like a better word to say, but I just feel like when people would say this stuff at, you go to conferences, you hear people tell you these stories, and you're like, okay, because when you're going through it, but man, it's so true, and really take it from somebody who has walked this really hard walk. And I put this out there a lot, and I say this a lot, and I put it on my testimony when I posted a very short testimony on Facebook. I would lay on the floor when my husband would go to sleep. I would lay on the floor of our bedroom on my side of the bed, so he wouldn't know, in the dark. And I would put a pillow down there, and I would just cry my eyes out to where my hair would be soaking wet. And I would just say, God, just let me be a mom. Even if even if it's not for me, because I know I really suck. Like, I'm really not a good person. Like, even if it's not for me, my husband, he deserves to be a dad. Like, let him be a dad. Let him, don't do it for me, do it for him. And, I really believe that God collects, and the Bible says God collects all of our tears and not a single one goes to waste. So I know in that time, God was just collecting every tear going, you don't even know what I'm going to do. And another thing that I used to say too was to people was, because people would come to me like, how do you do this? How do you have strength? And I'm like, look, my story is not, it's for me to grow, but my story is not for me at the end of the day. And I said that at the beginning of this. My story is to bring hope to barren wombs. My story is to bring faith where faith is lacking. My story is to rejuvenate spirits and souls and hearts that need rejuvenation, to remember, hey, we still serve a miraculous, amazing God.
Absolutely.
And sometimes our struggle, I believe most times our struggle is not for us. It's for other people.
Else.
Yeah. And look, if I have to walk this walk to let other people have faith and grow and come to the Lord and have these amazing babies and all this stuff, I'll do it. That's okay. I know I can endure it because I have God by my side. And that's just it. I think a lot of times we forget and we think we're alone, but we are so never alone. Like, we are so never alone. God is always with us. And, I always said, like, there were times where I thought I was alone, but I never really felt alone. And I realized it's because God was always by my side. He was always guiding me and walking me, holding my hand. He cried every tear I cried. He sat right there and he cried them with me, and he held me and he hugged me. I didn't even know he was doing it, but he's always there with us. And that's something that I really want people to know too, is that if you're ever feeling alone or lonely, just know you're not, because he's always there for us, and he's always there, right there with us, guiding us through it. Even if we're not taking that guidance, he's there.
That's beautiful. It reminds me a lot of your stories, Ray, that you've shared about the Lord being there with you in some of your darkest times too, and difficult times. But Evan, this is like so powerful, and you're just leading up to your miracle, which is, I can't even with this. So I don't know where you want to kind of continue that at, if it was just like a, how, because the years progressed. This started what, 2016 was when you were doing fertility treatments, and then you stopped. And then you moved, from Tennessee to Florida. You've worked as a nanny for all these years. And then what happened?
So 2021, I started working with a new family right at the beginning of the year. Really sweet family. And God blessed me with that opportunity. Actually, that was a massive opportunity. That was, once again, another promise that God made me. And I was like, how's this going to happen? And it totally did. Which I can tell that story too, if you guys are cool with it. God made it very clear to me that I was going to work with a professional athlete. And, right after I left, my first nanny family moved away, I did interview with a professional female soccer player, and I was going to work with her family. She's actually kind of well known. And then it fell through, and I was like, oh, darn, okay, that's fine. And then I interviewed with a professional, very quickly after that, actually, I interviewed with a professional NBA family, and they liked me and they liked my credentials, but they hired another woman. And I was like, darn, I really thought that was the one too. But I was like, you know what, God, I trust you. So in the meantime, I started working with another family. They were just a normal family. Just kidding. They were a really sweet family. They had a really sweet little boy, and I really liked their family a lot. And then out of the blue, the NBA family texted me again and said, hey, listen, our nanny left. So we're looking for a nanny, and I really liked you, and would you come back? And I was like, I know this is the job that God has for me. How am I going to tell this family that? Because they weren't believers, they're not going to understand that. How am I going to tell them that? They're just going to think it's a money thing, and it totally wasn't. It was really, I just needed to go work on me. So I prayed that whole weekend, like with tummy pains all weekend, because I'm like, how am I going to tell these people, they really love me and I really love them, and I don't know. So that Monday I walked into work and she goes, so I want to talk to you about something. And I'm like, okay. Cause I'm like gearing up to tell her that I got to quit. And she goes, and I didn't know any of this. They weren't planning on any of this. She goes, we just did like for fun. We did a showing of our house this weekend and we got 2 offers and we put an offer on a house in Coral Gables. And I understand that that's a far commute for you. So it's okay if you can't stay with our family. I was like,
wow.
Yeah. Right.
That's incredible.
So
Yeah.
I said, it is a far commute for me. And I do love your family, but I can't stay. And she's like, I understand. No big deal. And that was it. So I was able to start with a new family in January. Really wonderful, sweet, loving, kind family. I got along with them really well. They had 2 sweet little boys and it was a really great job for me. And God, it was just, once again, it's just another facet of this miracle that God has totally orchestrated everything. So that same month, God blessed us with our very first home, our dream home. And when we were walking through the house, I think we saw the house on like Christmas Eve, and we walked out back and we're the only people in the neighborhood that have a yard this size. And we have a gigantic, Australian pine in the backyard. And when we walked out in the backyard, I looked at my husband and he looked at me and we both at the same time said, that's going to be the kids' treehouse. Like we just knew that this was our home. We just knew it. And it was a struggle to get this house. You know, the enemy really didn't want us to have this house because it meant a lot would break for us. So, but we got the house and it again, another miracle, another amazing testimony within that as well. And we moved in and, I just kept my head down and I worked, and we went through a few little bumps in the road through the year. And I started noticing through the year that, they talk about, I was getting up early for work and I was having to get up, and they talk about how when you have a routine, you do it for 21 or 28 days and it becomes a habit. Mm-hmm. And I started noticing that it was getting really hard to wake up in the morning for work, like progressively. And there were days where I was like, I can't peel myself out of this bed. I'm like super tired. I was going to bed earlier and it was harder for me to get out of bed. So I started noticing like little things like that. With my nanny family, I traveled a couple of times. I went to California. I went to the Bahamas with them, just to kind of, help facilitate some trips with the kids and be there when they wanted to kind of do their own thing. So they went away for the week of 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. They went away to California and they were going to bring me with them, but they decided not to at the end. So I had about 3 weeks of rest here in the house. And the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, which I think is like the 23rd, I was at worship practice that Tuesday night. And at the end, I was like, I noticed I was a little irritable. I mean, I didn't notice it, but everybody else did. And I thought I was being normal, but at the end, we had to stay a few minutes extra to go over something. And I think I was just super irritated and my back really started hurting, like my lower back. And I was like, I felt that pain before, but it usually when I sit down, it goes away. And it wasn't going away. And I'm like, wow, my back's really hurting. Like, I don't understand. I didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought, I don't know what's going on. I'm just getting old. I don't know. So I went to bed that night and I think I stayed up kind of late. I was still really hurting. My back was still super hurting really bad. And through the night, I woke up a few times and my lower back was just killing me. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. When my husband woke up for work that morning, it was like, he wakes up at like 6 or so. And I was awake and he kissed me goodbye. And I was like, my back's really hurting. And it's like starting to hurt in the front too. And he was like, well, just kind of take it easy today. And we'll see, if you're still feeling that way, maybe we'll whatever. So he came home early from work that day because it was the day before Thanksgiving and we were going to go visit his mother on Thanksgiving Day and I was going to make pies. So he came home early and I was going to make pies and then we had church that night and then we were going to leave early the next day to go to his mom's. So I go in the kitchen at like 2:30. My sister-in-law calls me. We have whatever, hang up the phone. And within 5 minutes of me hanging up the phone, and I'm in the middle of mixing up this batter for pumpkin pies, and I felt like I involuntarily peed my pants. And I was like, what is happening? I was really weirded out. So I run, we have a bathroom like not far from the kitchen. So I run to the bathroom in the kitchen, or not in the kitchen, close to the kitchen. And I like rip my pants off, and I'm feeling like, maybe I just felt that. Maybe I didn't actually pee. And I'm like feeling everything. And while I'm sitting on the toilet, like, hopefully this isn't TMI, but stuff is still just rushing out of me.
Definitely not TMI for this podcast. For sure, Evan. Do not worry.
My house is fully tiled, so don't worry about this part. But I literally walk across the house, completely dripping still across the house. And I have these 2 rugs. I have wood floors in each of our bedrooms. So I have 2 rugs on either side. So I'm kneeling on my husband's side, just dripping all over the rug on his side of the bed. And I said, I peed my pants, but I didn't pee my pants. And he was like, what? So then of course I call my mom, and I'm like, oh, and I tell her everything. And she's like, okay, so I think you need to go to the hospital.
Did she say anything at this point? Like she was suspecting?
She literally said to me, she goes, is there any way that you're pregnant? And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? Is there any way I'm pregnant? What is it? The time to ask me that? And,
this is not the time, Mom. I something is coming out of me.
So we go to the ER, and of course I'm like still dripping. My husband's like, you better not get any of that in the car. So my towel, and he's a car guy.
Did you think it was pee?
No.
At this point you were like, this isn't pee.
I really had a gut feeling either there's something seriously wrong and something exploded inside of my body, or I'm in labor, because the back pain along with that really made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go into the ER, and they put me in a wheelchair immediately. And I said, I think I'm in labor. And they're like, how far along are you? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, well, how long? I'm like, I don't know. Who's your doctor? I don't have one. And now I've learned that, after being in the hospital and talking to some of the nurses in there, when that happens, usually it's, it's related to sometimes substance abuse and stuff like that. So and I looked crazy because I was home. So I'm in like my muumuu dress, my little like flip flops, my hair's crazy, no makeup. So they're probably like, yeah, this girl. But they lay me in a bed at the hospital in the ER, and a bunch of nurses come in, and I'm like, look, I'm still dripping. And they're like, it's fine. That's what we're here for. And they take a lot of blood, so much blood. I didn't even know I had that much blood in my body. And then the doctor comes in with this like little rinky dink ultrasound, and she goes, I'm just going to check in your belly. And she puts the ultrasound up to my belly, and there she saw a baby. And they said, wow, look how strong its heartbeat is. And I was like, I'm dumbfounded at this point. And I look at my husband, he's got tears in his eyes. I have tears in my eyes. And we're both like crying, our eyes, ugly crying, right? The nurses are all standing there like this. Like, and then one of them finally pipes up, and they're like, is this, and we're just like ugly crying in the corner, and they're all sitting there so awkward. And then finally one's like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And I was like, we wanted a baby for like 10 years. And then all of them start crying. One of the nurses was like, I gotta go. I can't deal with this. I gotta go. So then the ER doctor said, well, it looks, if I had to guess, I would say you're 16 to 20 weeks. And in my mind, I don't know a lot about this stuff, but I know enough that 16 to 20 weeks is not great. And if I am in labor, we got to do this. So they rushed me over to the X-ray department. I don't remember what it's called.
Radiology.
Yeah, that one. They ran radiology, and the woman puts it up to my belly. And of course I'm contracting this whole time because my water's broken. And that was probably like at 3:00, my water broke. And she puts the ultrasound up to my belly, and she said, no, you're 32 to 33 weeks. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was just so crazy. And so in the meantime, my mom, my husband's texting my mom, and my mom's, like telling our pastor, like, what's going on, and just pray for her. And he goes, they said 16 to 20 weeks. He's like, no, I think she's 32 to 33 weeks. And sure enough, like,
wow.
that was,
Wow.
he said, I'm going to pray for 32 to 33 weeks. And then literally 10 minutes later, they're like, no, you're 32 to 33 weeks. So I felt a lot more relief. I mean, of course, it's not ideal to have a baby at that time, but I felt so much more relief knowing that at least my baby is developed, and, he's like, it's good. It's so, I was in the ER for a super long time. I don't know what took so long, but by the time I got there at like probably 4. I was probably in the ER for 2 hours. I say they rushed me, but it really was no rush. They put me into labor and delivery at 6:45. I was finally like officially admitted. And I only know this because the NICU nurses repeated it to me 100 million times to tell me like, your story's so cool. 6:45, I was admitted to labor and delivery. And that's when the real fun labor started. And it's like, wow, this is not fun. They're still asking me all kinds of questions. And I was like, you guys, I don't care. Like, this really hurt. And the doctor came in, he's like, so maybe tomorrow, maybe through the night, we'll have a baby, and I'm like, I don't even know who this doctor is. I don't know what's going on. And I told you guys this story earlier. I really felt a peace through it all. Like, I think I was just so in shock that this was even happening, that more than anything, but I really just know that God was over the whole situation. So I felt a huge peace. And my husband and I kind of were laughing through the whole thing. Like, what the heck? Why is nothing we do normal? Like, so I was in room 291 and I was laying in the bed contracting, and I looked up at the light. It has like a metal frame around it, and it had like a dynamo sticker, whatever those things are called, like a label maker sticker on it. And it said, 2911. And immediately, like, it was as if the Holy Spirit placed on my heart, hey, look, that's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper, and it was just like, wow, like, okay, God, you're really here in every step. And it was just like, little things like that I just knew God was a part of everything. And I felt peace, not just because of that, but just because I knew that God was over this. And I knew he'd already proven to me, like, look, I'm not going to let anything bad happen to you. And at 6:45, admitted, went through labor for a couple of hours. When I was first admitted, I think I was like 6 or 7 centimeters, and I progressed very quickly. And by, they were setting everything up for the baby and for me. And the nurse said, if you feel like you have to go number 2, just tell me. That means it's time to push. So, I mean, 5 minutes after she said that to me, I was like, I looked at the nurse that was in the room. I said, I feel like I have to go number 2. And literally it was like a rush of people. It was like, everybody was in there, lights, camera, action, shut the curtain. And then there's no contraction. So I'm just laying there, spread eagle. Baby's like not halfway out, but she's like ready to come out. And I'm like, and everyone's looking at me. And I'm like, and the doctor goes, I think a contraction's coming. And sure enough, a contraction came. I pushed, and at 8:49, my daughter was born at 3 pounds 11 ounces at 33 weeks. And
that's amazing.
It was just like,
oh my gosh.
So of course she was, the last few weeks of pregnancy is when all this stuff develops. You guys know, you have kids. So it was like, they really had to rush her to make sure that her lungs were okay, to make sure everything was okay. So I really only got to see her for half a second, and then she was gone. My husband took a few pictures. He put her by my face, and my husband took a picture of me looking terrible and her looking as cute as can be. And then they rushed her out and brought her to the NICU. And then, I mean, it was like, as soon as she was born, everything went back to normal for me. Like, I felt completely normal. All the pain was gone. Everything was fine. I just felt really awkward that I'm sitting there half naked and these people are like still looking at.
Well, it's amazing what those natural endorphins release into your body.
Yeah.
To kind of stop everything that you were feeling before. Now, you probably still had maybe some contractions when the placenta was coming out, or if you were in the hospital, I don't know if they pull it out or what they do.
Well, yeah, luckily he did not yank it out of me, but
some of them do.
Read horror stories. It still was like, he had to kind of massage it out and get it out, but it came out, not perfectly comfortable, but not terribly either.
Yeah.
And then we had to sit there and we couldn't be admitted to the recovery floor because they needed COVID tests, stupid COVID. So, and then they lost our COVID test. It was just like this whole thing. We had to wait forever. And so we're just sitting there and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him. We're both like, what just happened? Because everybody rushed in to pull her out, basically. Everybody was gone. And it was like just me and him in the room. And he goes, what, Evan? Like literally what just happened? I said, I think we just had a baby. Like,
it's crazy. You guys went from, most people get 9 months to mentally prepare, and you guys went from like 0 to 1,000.
Yeah.
And that you just became parents in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, what it was like for you those hours laying in that bed as you were contracting. Like, what was running through your head of that you're about to be a mom, or is it just all a blur now?
I think it was a combination of a few things. It was a combination of like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. And then it was like, is this really happening right now? Like, is this when I'm supposed to have this baby? Are you sure? And then it was like, happy tears, because it's like, this is what I've always wanted. And of course they couldn't tell they couldn't tell the gender, but I knew in my heart it was a girl because God showed me in that vision that it was a girl. Right. And I actually had another dream about a year after I had that initial vision, and I was sitting on the floor. I don't know why I'm always sitting, but I was sitting on the floor of a living room, and I was talking to somebody, and I heard a little blonde girl going, Evan, Evan, Evan. And then she saw me and she goes, there you are. And she jumped into my arms and I held her. And it was the same little girl that I saw before. Wow. So I always knew it would be a little girl. So, my mom's texting my husband going, I wonder what it is. And he's like, my money's on girl, because, Evan had these dreams and we've always just kind of felt like it would be a girl first. So, and actually, while I was pregnant, I would say probably 2 months before I had her, I had a dream. Again, I had a lot of dreams when I was pregnant, a lot of pregnant.
Well, when you're pregnant, you do have a lot of dreams. Yes, so it does make sense.
But I had a lot of dreams about being pregnant.
Yeah. Wow.
So, the one that sticks out the most was I was having an ultrasound done, and I never saw the screen. I never saw it, but the ultrasound tech goes, oh, I can write the gender down on a piece of paper for you. And I'm like, okay. But in my head, I was like, what if I never saw anything? Am I even pregnant? Like, how can you even tell me that you can write the gender? What do you mean? So but I didn't, say all those things. So I was like, oh, okay. And then, next thing I knew, I was in front of our church standing like on the stage, and there was a bunch of like in the church, and they've always prayed for us too. And anytime we're like, oh, God's going to work, they would always like be so excited for us, or if a word was spoken over us, or God would say something to us about having our child, they were like, yes. And they were front center in this dream that I had. And I was telling everybody, so we're going to do a gender reveal in front of the whole church. And, when we pop these cannons, it was confetti cannons. It was also like the smoking, whatever ones. And, I remember thinking, what if I pop these cannons and there's nothing in there? Like, and I'm just going to be embarrassed in front of everybody. Like, oh, just kidding. I guess I'm not pregnant. So, we popped the cannons and lit the smoke things, and it was all pink, and everybody, our whole church was like jumping and screaming. And I was like, okay, so I guess I am pregnant, and I guess it is a girl. And then I woke up and I was like,
that was weird.
Does any of that mean, and I'm like, well, I guess that's just how it's going to be whenever I have my baby. And I really knew that I was going to get pregnant soon. I just didn't know. I didn't know.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I was wondering as you were telling this is, so you were having these dreams. Did at any point during the pregnancy, the thought came to you like, oh, maybe I could be like, did you ever think about taking a test?
Okay. Yes, I did think about taking a test at one point. And I went to I know I have pregnancy tests under my sink because, we used to take them frequently. Not frequently, but whenever it's like, well, I feel weird. So maybe, but I went to look for them and I could not find a single one. And I was like, I gotta pee anyway, so I'm not gonna just go to the store. So, and then I let it go. And it was like, God just took it out of my mind. And I really believe that God wanted me to know I was pregnant, but he didn't want me to be like overt, like, hey guys, I think he just wanted it to be between me and him.
Wow.
And he really protected my daughter. And I always say that God concealed my daughter the way he concealed Moses, in that time, because I really believe God has a special purpose and plan for her, not just through the testimony with me, but I believe she has an amazing, you don't come into the world like that without an amazing purpose. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
And we believe in God. And I believe that there is an enemy out there who can, really try to take all your joy and your happiness away. And I really believe God had to protect me. And so many times, even doctors are like, wow, how lucky are you that you didn't have to stress out through your pregnancy? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And especially going through infertility, I would have been stressed through my entire pregnancy. I would have been like, what if, and I would have been
a lot of worries.
And I just know that God alleviated all of that by just being like, well, let's keep it a secret.
I also can't help but think, because she was premature, like there must have been something going on in your body that caused you to go into labor, that if you would have known you were pregnant, it would have been so scary. I mean, I imagine you probably had feelings of being afraid during that process, but just finding out you're pregnant and you're in labor and she's 33 weeks, that's a lot to take in, but it's like your mind doesn't have time to catch up. Whereas like if you, after going through infertility treatments, if you would have known early on and gone through all of the prenatal care, the way that things go when you go into labor that early, it's like a nightmare, and it's so terrifying.
They could have really put a lot, and I think that was it too, is that they would have put a lot of fear in me through my whole pregnancy too. Like, well, we got to watch this baby because and it could have been a lot of not fear mongering on purpose, but just because
that's how our system is kind of built a little bit.
So I think it was just God saying, I got you, I got this, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Like I said, I think 2 weeks before I had her, I was eating raw. I met my husband at work, and we went to a sushi bar, and I had like raw sushi, which is like no number one. I drank coffee every day, and I traveled to the Bahamas, and I was on traveled to California. I traveled to California in October. So that was like a month before I had her. So, I was flying technically in my third trimester, and I really shouldn't have been.
Hey, that's okay.
You say all these things, but I was doing all the things that you're not supposed to do.
Sure.
Right.
And I was not, I had not a worry in the world about it. And like I said, going through what I went through, I would have been an extra worry ward, even though I realized God, even though I trust God, you still think about these things like, okay, I have to do my part, and I have to make sure that I'm not, jumping on a trampoline or horseback riding or roller coaster, I didn't do any of those things, but
it's a good thing you don't live too wild of a life, right?
Yeah, right. Good thing I'm not an adventurer.
That you're not like a surfer out there, or I did want to say, at least you finally got an answer for why you're so tired.
Oh my gosh. I was and then it's so funny because there were little things, because people ask me, whenever they hear the story, you had no idea, you had no symptoms. And I'm like, I really didn't have a lot. I had a little things that I could have equated to other stuff. So one thing was right at the beginning of my pregnancy. It was right at the beginning. Like I would say within the first, maybe at the beginning of the second trimester, if I do my math properly. I am a coffee drinker. I've been a coffee drinker my whole life. And then one day I went to get a cup of coffee, and I was like, it didn't make me nauseous, but it just didn't sound appealing.
You had an aversion.
Yes.
You were like, nah, I don't want this. Yeah.
But I need caffeine. I'm going to have a headache. So I started drinking like black tea, and I was like, this is really weird. This is not like me. I was telling my sister-in-law about it. She's like, oh, that's happened to me before. She said, that happened to me before. I had a sinus infection. And then after I got over it, I really didn't want coffee anymore. And I had remembered she told me that before. And I had just gotten over a sinus infection. So I'm like, It's probably just that. And then I was really tired. What was the other stuff? Like there was like little things that I could have, but I was working with 2 boys and I was working 5 days a week and I was working, running up and down stairs, chasing these big kids around, like it was. And that's another thing is I was working with 2 boys who were very active, playful, they're good kids, but like just, I'm not
Yeah,
even,
I have 2 boys and I'm
yeah,
tired all the time.
yeah. I can attest to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
It's like
running
up
you
and down, up
down.
and down, up and down. Do you have stairs, Rachel? Because if you do, you're going up and down stairs.
I don't. I purposely didn't want to buy a house with stairs.
Yeah. No, they had a big, beautiful staircase. And I was like,
oh,
every
boy.
time the boys would run upstairs, I'd stand at the bottom, like, come down.
Yeah.
But it was that. And I remember at the end of it, the chef at work, she said, Miss Evan, you look really tired. And I was like, I am really tired today, Miss Keisha. Like, I don't know what's going on. She's like, yeah, maybe I think I'm a little tired too. And I never felt tired at work. It was just those last few months. I was like, I'm dying. Like, I'm so tired. And I was tired, but I remember people telling me whenever they were pregnant that it was like a tiredness that you can't even stand up. And I wasn't that I was tired, but I wasn't that tired.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't remember what the other couple of things were, like just little things.
What was going on with your cycle? Because did you notice it by that, or you were just used to things being irregular?
Yes. PCOS makes your menstrual cycles very irregular. So it's normal to go a long time without having a menstrual cycle. So, so I had, one of those things where it was just like, it's not a big deal. I think I started out with menstrual cycles and then they were gone. And I was like, well, it wasn't abnormal for me to have a couple and then to go a long time without one and then have a couple. So God brought it back in that time. Sorry, my neck was bothering me. And he brought back my menstrual cycles just for me to get pregnant. And then
wow.
So I think I had a menstrual cycle, January, and then not in February, and then March, and then not in April, and then May. And I think I got pregnant between March and May, sometime there, because they estimated my due date to be in January of 2022. So, so it was just kind of like, God gave me my period for a few months, and he was like, this is my time. You bought your house. Things are set up, ready to go. It's time. And I didn't know that at the time, but now when I look back at it, it's like, okay, this was God's perfect plan. He wanted to set us up so that like, we weren't like we were living with my parents before that. And, we were trying to save up money to buy a home. And you guys know the housing market is insane.
Yeah.
So, we bought right before the height of all the craziness. So, it was like right before the height of all right before it. Like, I think we were our realtor's first clients that started to experience the craziness. And like I told you, it was a struggle to buy our house. And that was one of the things, because the market was starting to get wild. Yeah. And so God was like, here's your home. We want to do the right order of things. And then here's your baby, and it was boom, boom. And it was just so crazy how God orchestrated that so perfectly. And it just, again, it's another facet to the miracle. So, I have my daughter now, and she just turned 9 months yesterday. And I was telling you guys earlier that, she's in 9-month clothing at 9 months. And, that's just another facet of the miracle, that even though she was born early,
that's just amazing.
Yeah, she's right on track. She's really not missing out on anything, and she's perfectly healthy, and she's so happy. She's so cute. She's such a sweetie pie. And it's just all part of it, like to have such a happy, sweet little baby that, people would think, okay, well, she was early, so she's going to have some health issues. And I have seen stories where moms have given birth after me, gestationally, and they had a lot of health issues with their kids, and the kids were.
That was what I wanted to ask you, Evan, was what happened after she was born? She was taken to the NICU and everything, but what happened after that?
So she was in the NICU for a little while, not super duper long. And then she came home. You know, they were very cautious. They fell in love with our family and our story so much. And we were there. I was there. I mean, I immediately, the day after Thanksgiving, I called my nanny family and I told her the story. And I was like, I love your family so much, but I got to be honest, it's time for me to take care of my family now. I'm recovering from labor and I've got to breastfeed, and, you know, I've got to pump every 15 minutes or every, you know, 3 hours, whatever, you know, and I just can't. And she's like, I totally get it. I understand. You don't have to worry about any of that. So luckily they were in a position where they were getting ready to put their boys in like, you know, like young school for young kids, so they can start socializing and all that stuff. So I wasn't going to be phased out, but they were going to find like other things for me to do while the kids were at school. So it really was like, again, God's perfect timing, that it wouldn't affect them as much as it would have had I was with my first nanny family and they needed me, you know, all day, every day. So, so
that's
luckily,
amazing. That must have been such a fun phone call. Hey, guess what? I just had a baby.
Yeah. I was like, and I texted her, I said, hey, can you talk? And she was in California. So I had to like wait for the timing. And I'm sitting there like, you know, like stressing. And I'm like, I know she's going to be fine because she's a really awesome person, but like, how am I going to tell her this? Because
hey, ma'am, can't come to work on Monday.
Yeah, because she texted me on Thanksgiving. She's like, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. I hope you've had a beautiful, blessed day. And then she said, see you Monday. And I was like, no, you won't.
We need to talk. I had a baby.
I was like, absolutely. Hey, I'm going to call you tomorrow. We got to chat about something crazy that happened today. And she's like, okay. So,
that's wild. And what a beautiful thing too, that she was born right at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like that must have been such a moment where you're like, thank you, Lord. Thank you.
Yes. It was such a reason to give thanks to God, right? And like nobody knew. So my brother and my mom knew, my dad knew, and our pastor knew, and that was it. Nobody else knew. So I'm getting phone calls from like my grandmother. Hey, how you doing? You know, people are texting me, where are you? What's going on? So I didn't go to church that night, and I was meant to lead quite a few songs. So luckily my sister-in-law is also on the worship team, and she still didn't know. And she just took, you know, she took over everything, and she was like, it's fine. It's fine. She's, you know, she's our main worship leader. So she's like, I'll just take the reins on this. No big deal. She thought that we were just going to leave early to go to my mother-in-law's. And she just thought, so then actually this is really amazing. During our church service, our pastor walked up to my dad, and right at 8:40, like right 8:45, 8:50, he looked at my dad. He said, this is going to be a Thanksgiving you will never forget. And I gave birth at 8:49. So and my dad just was like, and he said it to him in the moments that my daughter was born. So
that's crazy. And that's amazing.
Yeah. It's just, God just knows. And he didn't know because he was up there preaching. He had no idea when it's just God, the way God works. So then my dad goes up to my brother and sister-in-law after church, and he's like, hey, we need you to come to the house. Evan and Brent need to talk to you. And they're like, that's never good in our family. Like when, hey, Evan and Brent.
Yeah, that's a serious tone there.
It's like, ugh. So they thought we just left early, and then they think, you know, your mind starts twisting and you're like, oh my gosh, like they were in a car accident. And then I FaceTime them, and then they see that I'm in a hospital, like I'm clearly in a gown. It's very obvious. And then they're really panicking. And I had just given birth. My mind is spinning. And I just looked at them and I was like, I just gave birth to your niece. And they were like, my brother was so funny. He's standing there. He goes, I'm confused. Don't you have to be pregnant to have a baby? I'm confused. I'm so confused. I don't understand. My sister-in-law is crying her eyes out. Like she's so excited. My brother's like, he's just like,
it's running through his mind how babies are made.
Yeah. Wait, what is that?
I thought I knew how this worked.
My brother's typically a really, you know, John, he's kind of like a stoic person. He likes to laugh and goof off. He's not really shocked by a lot. This really shook him to his core. He was like, and of course, I mean, how can you not be? He was like, I don't, and he said he drove the whole way home with that same face. He was like, I don't. And he's like looking at mama. He's like, I'm so confused. My mom's like, don't say you're confused. Your sister had a baby. You're not, it's clear.
Yeah. Well, your mom must have been so over the moon.
Like, of course, when you first say stuff, liquid is leaking out of my body, you know, she's like panicked. So something's wrong with my daughter is what she's thinking. And then, you know, we get to the hospital, we find everything out. And she's like, oh my gosh. And of course my husband's communicating with her this whole time because I'm too busy. And so I actually went back and read their text messages, and it's so cute because she's like, where is she? What is she doing? Is she okay? Okay. How's the baby? The heartbeat? Is she 16 weeks? How far? And she's asking all these questions. He's like, no, yes. Okay, great. Yeah. Fine. Baby's good. Like, and it's just so funny. And,
typical
and
man.
yeah, I know. Right. And I'm going, gosh, what was going through his mind at the time? Like,
Yeah.
for the most part, my husband and I are pretty calm people. We don't like freak out in stressful situations. We don't like panic. We're both pretty good in high stress situations. But this was one of those things that like, we were like, what is going? I literally looked at my husband and I was like, what the heck is going on? And he's like, I don't know. Like it was so wild. It was just I love telling this story. I love shocking people. I usually don't tell just random strangers, but if I'm out with the baby and they're like, oh, she's so cute. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And then they're like, no, really, she's really cute. And then they keep going on about it. I'm like, okay, you want to say something's cute? All right, here you go. I'm like, you want to hear a story about her? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I didn't know I was pregnant with her until I went into labor. And they're always like,
they're like, I've seen the show, but I didn't know that actually happened.
Yeah. They're like, you're like that show. I was like, oh yeah, baby. And what's cool about it is that like most times when I tell people that, they're like, whether, you get the feeling that they're a believer or not, every single time they're like, that's a miracle. And I'm like, you're darn right. Yes. That's a miracle. Yes. 100% straight from heaven. And that's what I tell them every time. I'm like, this is straight from heaven. And then I tell them my husband and I wanted to have a baby for 10 years. And then God just gave me one day.
That's so amazing. Evan, your story and your testimony is just so beautiful. I know that this is going to be so inspirational to so many women out there and women that are in families that are in that time of waiting. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I'll tell the story 1,000 more times. It's my duty. It's my duty to tell this story and to hopefully this will bring hope to someone, at least one person. If this brings hope to someone and lets them know that our God still does these amazing, miraculous things. And remember to put your faith in God and remember to trust only God. And I was, like I said before, I know, people would tell me things and tell me to do things and give me figurines that, I never trusted in those things and I wouldn't even put them up on my shelf because I wanted people to know, or I wanted myself to know, hey, you're going to rely on God to do this. No doctor, no figurine, no, I said before, like people tell you the weird sexual positions that they tell you to do. I didn't rely on any of that. And like I said, I would go home and do the complete opposite because I said, no, God, I'm going to trust you. And I believe that you're going to do this. And I think if you just have patience and faith and you really believe in God and you trust the Lord with all your heart, he can do anything. You just got to believe that he can do anything.
Yeah.
I love that.
Amen. It's so amazing. It's so encouraging. Like I had mentioned to you, Rebecca and I have been doing this little series on infertility. And as soon as we started talking about it, you came to my mind as I just really wanted us to round out talking about infertility with that hope. And hearing all the little details of it and what God walked you through, just so many women are in those dark places. And it's one of the hardest things that women can go through. And to just round out this series that we have been on to share just a tiny little bit of the world of infertility with a testament of your faith, your testimony of hope, of you delighting yourself in the Lord and him giving those desires of your heart and it leading to your little baby girl. It's so beautiful. It's so encouraging. And it just makes me in awe of God and what he still does today. Because like you said at the beginning of this, that he is a God of miracles and he's still doing miracles today.
Absolutely.
And to just highlight that it's such an honor for Rebecca and I to just highlight your miracle.
Amen.
Yeah, it totally is.
He's a very faithful God.
Yeah.
And he really, when he says something to you, it is yes and amen. It is 100%. He does not lie. He's not, just say things to say things. If he says you're going to be a pop star and you're going to have 20 kids, you're going to be a pop star and you're going to have 20 kids. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Of course, it's within his timing, and and it's within, I will say this, it's within our obedience too. We have to show our obedience to God. The Bible says obedience is far better than sacrifice. So we have to be obedient to what God calls us to do. And I really believe that there's a lot of little things that go into it, but if you believe what God tells you and you stay faithful to him and you stay faithful to the word and you find delight in the Lord and you truthfully just, he can do anything. I mean, anything. There is no limit in God. I mean, he can make a baby in a woman that has no uterus. I really believe that. I mean, after being through what I've been through, I really believe that God could put a baby in a woman that's had a hysterectomy or whatever. Like, I really believe that God can regrow parts if he wants to and make things happen that you couldn't even believe your eyes if you want it. I really believe God can do these things. And I think that's the kind of faith and that's the kind of hope that we all have to have, and to know that God can just do anything. And if you have that understanding of God, you're golden.
Yeah. He's the God of miracles.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Evan, was there any last things that you wanted to share? You've really just been such an inspiration, I know.
Just trust in the Lord, trust in God, and don't trust in the things of this world. Don't trust in anything else. But if you really truthfully put your trust in the Lord, find your joy in him. And, really just, I'm trying to think if there's anything, really, really poignant like that I need to say, like, just, he is so faithful. I don't have any other words. He pulls us from the worst places, and he's so faithful, and he changes us in ways that we didn't even know were in there. So follow him, trust him, believe in him, and know that his words are so true and so faithful, and he will stay by your side no matter what. Don't ever feel like you're alone. I said that before. Know that there are women out there, and know that, seek the Lord, and he will bring you to your people that will help you and help encourage you, and the people that you need, because we are meant to fellowship with our people, we are meant to be with our people, to be encouraged and be lifted up. And that's another reason I want to share my story. I want to lift you guys up. I want to lift everybody up. And I just want to tell you, like, from the top of the roof, like, God is so cool. He's so amazing.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Thank you for sharing your story, Evan. And thank you all for listening today. This has been a journey. We, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see baby Ben decided to join us for the conclusion of this episode. So if you want to follow along outside, be sure to check out the YouTube version, because you get to kind of watch us dialoguing, which is fun. And so I'm actually, Rachel, since baby Ben, he's going to read the Bible verse. No, just kidding. Rachel, could you read the verse for us today, our closing verse? Do you have that up? No pressure.
Yes, I do have it. What we want to close with today is Psalm 139, 1 through 18, correct? I have the right notes.
You have the right notes. Psalm 139, 1 through 18.
Okay. You have searched me, Lord, you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. And we are wishing you all a radiant week. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Evan, for being with us.
Awesome. Thank you.